You're listening to Beyond the Benchtop, a show about food ingredients. Our conversations go far beyond the lab as we dive into topics spanning from food science to market trends and everything in between.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Beyond the Benchtop. My name is Christy, and I am the R&D specialist here at St. Charles Trading. Today's episode is going to actually be a little bit different today. There's no guest joining me today, and it'll be just you and I for the next couple of minutes. Over the course of the past season, we've been able to dive deep into the purchasing and the sales side of the ingredient industry. From market trends to processing techniques, we've discussed building up to production level, quality assurance and control, application use, and overall, the importance of customer service and satisfaction. We've been able to have in-depth conversations with several of the great people that I work with here. Where do you think the biggest shift has occurred within the starch industry?
I think it's clean label.
The clean label.
I think you're seeing a bigger shift in that space. You know, it's becoming more, not necessarily more sensitive, but people are becoming more aware of what they're putting in their bodies, and they're educating themselves and reading labels, and people want to, I guess, to eat better.
Yeah, definitely.
And to achieve that, I mean.
Yeah, the FDA, I think it was in 2016, made label changes, and like you've noticed, like the calories are more bold, and like certain ingredients that Americans are actually deficient in, they're making them include on the labels. So I think like now there's really a lot more development in people reading labels and reading, like we were talking about, the ingredient decks and reading the nutrition panel. So people are really becoming interested in like you said, what they're putting in their bodies. So I think that clean label is really just adding to all of that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think that's where you'll see the biggest growth potential is in the clean label starch space.
Have you seen an increase in demand for kind of more internationally oriented product?
Yeah, I'd say that's 100% correct. I mean, it's something that if you look at every cuisine on the planet, both of them are in it.
Exactly.
So everything from pasta to instant meal kits to overnight oats or oat milk, which is a big one nowadays. Yeah. I get that at my Starbucks.
I was going to say, especially in California, you probably see it a lot.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it really has been. It has been a lot of those factors. But yeah, it's in every cuisine on the planet. They use these grains because they're very nutritious. They last a while. The shelf life is good, and then you can have them in various different forms. And we haven't even talked about the flours. So a lot of those you see in baking applications, pancake mixes. Different things like that. So besides just the whole the product, you also see milled versions of it that pretty much touch every single thing you can. Anything you can make, you could put rice or oats into realistically.
Salt is in everything, and I mean, we as consumers, we eat a lot of food, but think about all the things we use on a daily basis. I mean, in some of your clothing, it takes salt to help create some of the fabrics that we wear. So I think that outside of kosher salt, which is the biggest salt that we buy, outside of that, I mean, if you really invest in like iodized salt and things like that, you'll see the multiple different things that salt is truly used for.
Right.
I mean, obviously, we need it to live, but we need it to do things in our everyday life,
Yeah.
Especially when snow falls here in Illinois. It's not a fun time.
I know. I'm hoping that it's finally stopped. But yeah, I agree. I totally think that most people think that it's only within the food industry and maybe a little bit to after they shovel their driveways put down. But it's, like you said, used in pharmaceutical. It's used in, cosmetic. It's used in a lot of different industries as well.
Yeah.
What do you think is the most difficult issue relating to the salt industry?
So the most difficult issue that I see is the supply chain aspect of it, where, like I was saying, facilities produce X amount. They have, they try to map it out. There's machines go down. Certain diet things change where a certain kind of salt becomes more popular. Trendy. You mentioned like Himalayan sea salt is a big one. Lately that's picked up a lot of steam, and if something goes wrong in the supply chain side, the customer, a lot of these customers, if you have chip customers, you have snack customers, it's a big ingredient for them, even though it's very cheap.
Yeah.
It's a big part of their ingredient deck.
Yeah.
And the supply chain thing is the hiccups that happen on occasion.
Definitely. I think the availability is probably, like you said, the hardest.
We'll do things for certain customers where we'll pre-plan for that.
Yeah.
And get X amount on the floor just in case there's an emergency.
Yeah, that's definitely good. I remember a friend told me that what can go wrong will go wrong. So I think that's really a good point.
Yeah.
I'm saying that's really valid. What sect within the food industry do you think that garlic production will grow? So maybe, the health and wellness industry, do you think it will grow in the snack restaurant now that they're opening back up?
So right now you can tell that everybody is going to healthier way and eating well. So you want garlic, you want veggies in all your product. So on the snack they want all those veggies. The more veggies, the more healthy ingredients you're gonna see in those snacks, the more popular they're gonna get with the consumer, for sure.
I definitely agree. And I think too, within today's times, there's been shifts because of COVID in what industry that they're really being successful in. And I think, like you and I were saying, that it's going to go back to a little bit of restaurant because things are starting to open up again.
Well, people is cooking right now.
Exactly.
Well, restaurants are open, but they learn to cook because of COVID. Not learn, but they are cooking more often.
Right.
So they are using all those ingredients, and sometimes you don't want to shop all those products. So those dehydrated ingredients are amazing.
Right.
Amazing, because you have the same, all the same good thing in the veggies and garlic than the fresh one.
Agreed.
And shelf life is amazing. It's long, and you can store it in your kitchen or in our whatever warehouse at room temperature.
Exactly.
So it's a plus.
I think a lot of the times people think that, across the board, a dehydrated vegetable or a dehydrated onion or garlic product is going to be the same. And I think one thing that St. Charles really excels at is we know that it's not, and quality can be inconsistent, and we try to, as closely as possible, maintain that and make sure that a lot of the times customers will come forward. It might be a completely new product that they're looking for. They might want to say, we want you to match this existing product that we have. And it seemed, and they were asking you to do that. And it's really amazing how closely you were trying to follow matching that and making them as happy as possible. So that's really spectacular.
Yeah, absolutely. And, as you mentioned, it is no easy process in matching what these customers are looking for.
Yeah.
Before we kind of onboard one of those international suppliers, we go through so many steps, like 38 or 40, just to approve a supplier. And that's not even happens, that's not even what happens when we purchase a product. We have to do pre-shipment testing, post-shipment testing. We've flown out to our suppliers and seen what their facility looks like and inspected it ourselves. So,
definitely.
It's a very rigorous process, but we have to supply quality ingredients. We can go get not quality ingredients on the market pretty cheap, but that's not who we are.
Yeah, and like millennials, they are always looking for more ways to live better, eat better. Then black pepper is a good option, like a lot of people use black pepper instead of a lot of salt, as you say. So it's always a good way to eat better.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it comes down to what you're putting in your body. You want to be proud of, and you want to say, okay, I've eaten really well this week. I've been eating at home a lot more. I know we've been seeing that shift a lot. People have been cooking for themselves much more. And now that things are opening up, it's going to start probably shifting to the restaurant industry again. But for a long time, it was mostly grocery for quite some time.
Yes. But, restaurants, they're fully open now in most of the states. So thanks God.
It's hard enough to make money in the food industry. But then when you're just trying to compete on what I call the white ingredients, the starches, the sugars, the salts, the things that people are so used to hearing, it's like...
that are more structural.
And that they'll take your business away for, a quarter cent a pound. Where if you can build something like pepper where people, the quality is dependent on there because it does matter to the finished product, And also, it's hard to manage. It's not easy. I don't think international gets enough recognition for how they get something that is dried on the ground. I mean, if you ever look at a black pepper vine, they're like 30 feet tall.
Yeah.
They're all 100% harvested by hand. There is no mechanical equipment in the black pepper industry in 2021. I mean, when you sit there and you think about that, where everything's automated.
There's so many critical control
and they
points.
put them out on tarps.
Right.
And they dry them in the sun. And then they grind it. The only automation is when it hits a grinder.
Right.
So, I mean, and think about how many millions of pounds are harvested still by human beings.
Yeah.
And that's if everything goes right. And then they got to put it on a container. Then they got to put it on a boat. And then it's got to figure out a way to get here from all that stuff. And that's kind of what's always intrigued me about the spice trade was the, you know, if you followed a container around the world, what it would look like. And I mean, it's pretty interesting where corn's grown in all of our backyard. You know, you're
especially in the West.
Yeah, I mean, we're all used to it.
Right.
So it doesn't have the romance, I guess, as black pepper does.
What industry would you say you mostly sell to?
It'd be in the food industry for sure. I mean, that's the majority of what is used in the U.S. is in the food industry. There are many different industries that sugar is used in that people probably don't even realize. But food is for sure the biggest.
Yeah, it is funny because I think a lot of people do forget that it kind of is used a little bit in pharmaceutical, a lot in the beauty industry. I mean, you get different type of skincare that will utilize it or will use for like a type of scrub, but I would say predominantly the food industry.
Yeah, and then it's used in, you know, saline bags, which is people probably don't understand.
I didn't know that.
But it's also used in the crude oil industry.
Really?
So for fracking.
Yeah.
Some of the industries use it. They use it in Brazil a lot for the oil industry, but for ethanol, so it's a little bit different. But we use it actually in part of the mechanical part of crude oil industry.
Wow, I actually never knew that. I mean, typically it's, I would say, the bulk or the highest volume within a recipe within the food industry, but there's also a lot more uses for it. I think a lot of people just associate it with being a cheap bulk ingredient as well as for flavor, but it's actually used for other things such as like reducing the microbials of a recipe as well. It can actually help extend the shelf life as well. So I think it's pretty amazing to see the other uses for it. Like you were saying, I had no idea that it was used in the oil industry.
Yeah, it's a little interesting. I mean, that's kind of new to me too, but I mean, in distribution, you find the different networks that it's used in. Yeah. Whereas previously I was used to being used in food. So it's a pretty cheap filler, and it's a very sweet product. So it's, I mean, it's in a lot of different products.
Exactly. Yeah. And even if it's something that might be lower in sugar or doesn't contain as much sugar, it's obviously still there in the recipe as well.
Pick your product. My applesauce with sugar in it is better than my applesauce with high fructose corn syrup in it.
Exactly.
Whether that's the case or not, the label acceptance says that it is. And so
exactly.
So I think, you know, we've really seen a lot of that in the last 10 years, and I would presume that it's going to keep accelerating, that it's going forward that way.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think now consumers are really starting to look at the ingredient decks, the ingredient declarations, to make sure, you know, what does this contain? What am I putting into my body? And they kind of like a more simple ingredient deck. So I think that's kind of starting to kickstart the sugar market once again, even though obviously it's a market that's always relevant and always reach for, not only because of its ability to help flavor and sweeten products, but it also has a lot of different properties as well. You know, it can lower the water activity. It helps with binding. It can also help with adding texture as well as, you know, softness to different bakery items. And so there's a lot of uses and a lot of benefits of it as well. And how would you say that St. Charles Trading is able to alleviate these problems despite longer lead times?
Well, we need to have more storage, so we need to make sure we stock more, and instead of waiting 1 month, you need to have in your lead time 3 months lead time now. Yeah.
So really planning for that, and I think that our international department in general does an amazing job at this. I know that the ports have been really tight and really congested lately.
Yeah, and no space on the vessel, so it's very difficult to find first of all, to find containers, because they don't always come back to the country. So we see all those containers everywhere, but they have to come back to the country to load more product, right?
Yeah.
So you need to find containers, you need to find space on the vessel. And this is, it's difficult.
Yeah, it's truly one obstacle after another. Mm-hmm. And then if it's one thing, then you come in and you have to make sure the product is also of high quality as well. So it's really just, I would say, one obstacle after another. But I think St. Charles Trading always does a really fantastic job of along the way just kind of fine-tuning everything and making sure that
we do our best for our customers, for sure.
Yeah, it's exhausting, but you guys do a really good job of alleviating those problems, which I'm sure the customer always really does.
And they understand.
Appreciate.
They appreciate, yes, for sure.
So what inspired St. Charles Trading as a whole to get into the chili industry?
You know, like a lot of things, we had a customer, a very good customer, a staple customer, in fact, and reach out to us.
Yeah.
And we went and we found them, and we found a good supplier in that a lot of the big concern, obviously, is paperwork and labels and all that. And we ended up plowing through that whole process to make it extremely smooth for them.
Nice.
And, you know, they asked, we found it, and that's how we kind of got into it.
And you said, too, that you noticed, like, within the past few years that there's been a higher demand. Why do you think that is?
I'm not 100% sure because peppers have been around since, like, 7,000 BC.
Yeah.
But what I do believe, I think there was an initial, for years, there was a, hey, that's hot and spicy, I don't want it. You either were in or you were out. And I think the more that the internet and the more that like things like Pinterest and the food world and cooking shows and all that, people are more attuned that there's a ton of different kinds of peppers, and you can satiate your
suits you.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a ghost pepper. It could be just a tad bit of spice to it, hotness. And I think in the food world it's becoming more and more and more prevalent.
Definitely. I think, like, you touched down on talking about, like, the Food Network and, you know, the cooking channel. I think people are viewing it and watching it and seeing, okay, they're using things that are more cultural as well as have more heat and spice to it. So they think, okay, I just got to find what's right for me. Then they start getting adventurous in their kitchen or so on. And that creates a demand then within maybe their company as well, that they want to start getting into that as well. Moving forward, I will not be hosting the show. I am moving on to new opportunities within the food industry. During my time here, I was thankful for the people that I've gotten to work with and under, the opportunities I've had, and the projects that I've worked on, as well as the growth that I have made. Be on the lookout for the next season, and as well as be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for updates. Bye.